Sports. All y'all, Jarrett Roser with another round of LSU camp updates. It's Saturday, August 17th, and the Tigers continue to go through a week where there was a lot of emphasis on developing mindset, mentality, as Brian Kelly said multiple times this week, putting the players into some stressful situations. He said today, sandpaper type situations, moments of friction, and that today, on top of being pretty ridiculously hot out there, even by standards of the rest of camp. That included some kind of mixing and matching of ones versus twos and threes and whatnot in terms of competitive reps. And part of that, as Coach Kelly mentioned, was not only to develop some of the depth behind the frontline guys and get some high end competitive reps for some of the twos and threes, but also to get guys ready in that ones group, to get guys ready for situations in which, a teammate here or there may be sidelined for some reason or another, and you have to be prepared to kind of pick up some slack at some times when somebody gets thrust into that lineup. And so kind of going through both sides of the ball, starting with offense, two guys that I think we saw, in some of those situations that we hadn't seen as much of with that first team unit, getting some big reps, both because of that approach to practice, as well as Coach Kelly mentioned sort of a stomach bug going through some of the team right now, particularly with the offensive line. You didn't see DJ Chester out there, and you saw Cohen Eccles, the freshman from Katy, Texas, working at center, and I think holding his own. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him along with one or two of the freshman defensive linemen in terms of progress we've seen during camp, but to watch his progression to where he's matching up with guys like Jacoby and Guillory and company, and not necessarily winning every rep, but certainly holding his own against some of the Tigers' best defensive linemen. And then the other guy, Tyree Adams, the redshirt freshman from St. Aug, who Kelly had a lot of praise for today after practice. Tyree was working a lot at left guard today. We've seen more and more of him as camp has gone on, and he's someone that Kelly says, like a lot of the younger players, you're still looking for more consistency day in and day out, but what they've seen from him in terms of flashes lets them know that he's one of their top rotation linemen that's going to have a chance to potentially play behind that great veteran starting group that they head into the season with. Another notable position, one that we've talked an awful lot about with every one of these takeaways, and you see in a lot of the press conference videos and stuff like that, is that tight end room continues to be one of the most exciting position groups on this LSU roster. Amazing the progress that this program has made at recruiting that position from just a few years ago, where it was a pretty thin room, to now where you're talking about Kamarian Pimpton and Tradez Green, the second and first year players in purple and gold, are so impressive that the Tigers feel like they have to use a lot of 12 and 13 personnel this fall, meaning a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets. Kelly said without a question, you're going to see both of those guys on the field at times, with returning standout Mason Taylor. And the versatility that all three of those guys bring is such a nice piece of that equation, where obviously we've seen Tradez Green at the high school ranks be a big wide receiver out there for East Feliciana and for Zachary High. Pimpton has that same level of athleticism to him where you can split him out, and we've seen throughout camp some instances in which Mason Taylor can be split out, and they feel good using him in that role, as well as we saw some goal line sets today where Mason lined up in the backfield and was lead blocker on a couple of different plays, working from a goal line situation that worked out pretty well for the Tigers. There was a stretch where they showed some of their versatility down in those circumstances as an offense, including a little Nussmeier rollout touchdown pass to Pimpton out to the right, followed up by a big bruising Caleb Jackson touchdown run between the tackles, and then a quick little sweep to Xavion Thomas, getting to the perimeter with some of the speed he brings to that wide receiver room. And so a lot of weapons and a lot of versatility to the ways that the Tigers feel like they can use those weapons. All three of those tight ends had notable plays today. I know there's a highlight out there of Tradez Green with a nice catch over the middle during some of the earlier on 7-on-7 type segments of practice. On the flip side, I mentioned we talked some about the defensive line, a lot of praise for some of the young defensive linemen, including Ahmad Bro, who Coach Kelly mentioned as a freshman, they know they can rely on the former Ruston star to be where he needs to be at any time. Just the intelligence that he brings to the game, and then you tack on nearly 40 pounds with all the work he's done in terms of his diet, nutrition, and weight room work this offseason since arriving down to Baton Rouge a few months ago. It's been really impressive to watch how much Ahmad has bulked up to go with what was a very intelligent and versatile game coming out of that fantastic defense for the state champion Bearcats. So he's someone that Kelly and company said absolutely expect to see play in that defensive line rotation. Another guy that's been fun to watch throughout camp so far is Dominic McKinley, who has gone from Bo Davis getting on his ass a little bit early on in camp to today hearing a few times, really nice job, Dom, after some reps where he was able to get some big push from the middle of that line. He and Eccles, I think, were both in that kind of boat where you heard Bo and Brad Davis getting on the youngsters early on in camp, and to watch them deal with that tough coaching, learn and grow from it, and be at a point where you expect to probably see them involved in their respective rotations right now is pretty impressive for sure. Another guy we've talked about a little bit, who doesn't have quite the same bulk in the middle of that defensive line as Ahmad and Dom do, is Kalaj Cobbins, the freshman edge rusher from Destrehan, who, again, we saw just torch a couple of offensive linemen with his ability to speed rush right past them, on that right side of the defensive line, the left past the left tackle, and some second and third team type reps, and get home with some of his pass rush. And so we haven't heard as much about him and sort of the expectations of what his role will be. They're a little bit stronger as a team right now, I think, at the edge spots in terms of what they know they have back, with Savion Jones, who continues to be great, Braden Swinson, who's been fantastic since we've seen him back in some team settings the last couple of weeks, and then Deshaun Womack, who was popping at different points throughout camp. But Cobbins is certainly showing flashes of some of his ability that made him such a big priority in this past recruiting class for the LSU Tigers. Jacobian Guillory was back in the middle after being a little bit banged up earlier this week. It was good to see him, looking comfortable and getting some nice push up the middle. Jalen Lee, another guy, the former Live Oak standout that was in kind of the same boat as Swinson, where we didn't see him as much early on in camp while he was finishing up that summer Spanish class. He had a couple of nice reps. Gio Paez back out there doing his thing. I thought today we probably saw more of JVR Suggs, the transfer defensive tackle, making some big plays than I think we've seen at any other point throughout camp. Had a really nice stop in one of the gaps on a goal line situation, and a couple of other nice plays in different segments of practice. And so that group continues to kind of come into its form. Linebackers have been solid all camp. That's the group on defense that you kind of know what to expect the most from. It's that same group of defensive backs that we've seen kind of leading the way throughout camp. And also the youngster, I think, in terms of one of the standout plays we saw from the secondary, PJ Woodland had a nice, don't think he got his feet down in bounds, but close to interception on the sideline, where he covered a lot of ground in a hurry on a pass out to the right sideline, and came away with a catch right along the sideline. And so to watch the freshman from Mississippi continue to come on in that cornerback group behind what has been Sage Ryan and Ashton Stamps leading the charge for most of fall is definitely encouraging. Now just 2 weeks away from that season opener against USC, we only have a couple more practices where we're actually allowed in and able to watch huge chunks of practice, or the last couple of days for sure, to shoot some photo and video content. So make sure you're checking all of that out on the Louisiana Versatility channel, as well as dropping some comments if there's anything you want to hear a little bit more about. We'll continue to post some of these takeaways for these last couple of times, as well as all of the press conferences and everything heading on into the season and throughout. Thanks as always for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe, all of that. I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana Versatility. Hope you all have a great rest of the weekend.